Our next speaker is the Honorable Kenson. He's the Minister responsible for Education, Youth Development, Sports and Digital Transformation.
Morning, everybody.
Afternoon.
Afternoon. Wow. As you may know, the Ministry of Youth Development and Sport hosted our 44th annual Sports Award ceremony on the weekend at the Royal Turn. Notable accomplishments, of course, Julian Alfred coming up with a top honor for Senior Female Athlete of the Year, given her remarkable accomplishments on the global stage. In the male category, Akim Ogis, after a stellar season, first of all with the St. Lucia Kings, and then making it over to West Indies. The maturation of this young man is something that we really need as a ministry to take note of and see how we could use his experience and his modus operandi, just the way he functions as a young athlete, as a young professional so far. I think we need to really establish a lot of programs with him once he's available on island. And he got the Senior Male Sportsman of the Year. In cricket, in the junior division, J.D. Emmanuel, of course, Carifta medalist, won the very keenly contested, I found out after, award for Junior Female Athlete of the Year. A very, very, very good season at Carifta for St. Lucia. Sophia Parks would have been another athlete, 8 medals, who was very, very close in terms of the final count, doing very well. And in the male division, Antoine Destang, again, winning Junior Male Athlete of the Year. So congratulations to the Ministry of Youth Development and Sports for hosting this event. Particularly given attention was the accomplishments in the alternative sports department. For the first time, we identified an Alternative Sports Association of the Year, and that was handed over to the Chess Federation. As a matter of fact, I sat down there as minister, and before they actually announced the Alternative Sports Association of the Year, I whispered chess. Chess has been absolutely amazing. The membership in chess right now exceeds 300 chess players on this island, and we've had some remarkable performances in the region and in the world in terms of chess. We're from the island of Derek Walcott and, of course, for Lewis. And so we've been punching above our weight in the sport of chess. They've made tremendous mileage in chess at schools. Again, an alternative pathway, and that is why we develop an alternative sports sector, so we can give attention to the individuals that would not necessarily run in quickly or jump in high. So I think that has worked very, very well. All right, so that was our National Sports Award ceremony. Announcements, we are about to hit the peak of our alternative sports season. You will start seeing the bike riders a lot more in this nation. So over the next couple of weeks, the next week and a half, we want to, as minister, I really want to speak to caution. I really want to encourage the motorists, the bikers, in fact, the pathfinders, all the other individuals that will be on island during our independence time to really be cautious. And we've been speaking to the associations that fall under the remit of alternative sports to do more in terms of programming. I've always said sport is just not on the day, and it's just not on a field, a court, or on a racetrack. We need to have lifelong programming for our participants. So this means the drag racers, the drag racing club in St. Lucia, off-season, you need to have programs that are geared towards safe driving, geared towards ensuring that members can start thinking of how they can have programs for licensing for the next generation of drivers on the island. You know, have those programs that really develop the individual beyond the sport, and we're going to continue to encourage that. But that being said, we will be hosting drags in View Fort this week, next week, and we'll be having a number of sporting events as we celebrate alternative sports in this country yet again. So you could look out for these, and we are certainly hoping that as many people as possible will participate. The Ministry of Education, we had some very good discussions with Monroe University as it pertains to the direction that they are taking. And of course, as Minister, I express tremendous thanks to them on behalf of the young people of this nation on what they've done for our education sector. Monroe has shown the agility that is needed as we come into a global market, a global world, and the different models of education. And one of the discussions we had was how it is that we get young men into programs at Monroe, how it is that we get young men on the blocks to see themselves as being able to obtain a Monroe degree. And of course, one of the discussions we had was naturally sports management, physical education. We've never had those programs offered on island in terms of a degree program. So that even if you're at primary school right now and you like football and you like to read about football or track and field, that you can see yourself acquiring a degree in physical education, sports management. And of course, they agreed. And so Monroe have started the discussion and the groundwork, the logistical works to offer for the first time in St. Lucia a degree program in sports management and also a degree program in physical education. I think that's very good news for our young individuals that may not necessarily want to be doctors and lawyers, but love sport enough to become a sports manager. I will say this, of course, pressure would come from me, considering the fact that I became a national athlete at the age of 9, and during that time at primary school and secondary school, I did not see a pathway through sport to become an academic. And of course, we want the next generation to do better or to be offered better than what was offered to us. And so I'm very happy that Monroe has started that work, and we're certainly hoping that it will bear fruit for our young people that are on the blocks that are sports-minded. That being said, we also had discussions on the associate's degree program that they currently offer in sports management. And of course, one of the conversations that we had was the fact that the minimum requirement is 5 CXCs inclusive of maths. And of course, when I heard that, I had that conversation with Monroe to ask them, okay, I as a parliamentary rep for Cruisley, go on the block in Seaview, an individual has 7 CXCs, 7, including English. The individual is perhaps the most talented footballer in the community, and an individual who can add, subtract, multiply, divide very easily, and he wants to become a sports administrator. Are we going to deny this individual the opportunity to get an associate's degree in sports management simply because they didn't have math? That took the conversation in a very nice direction. They've agreed that there will be a pathway to these individuals to actually have a written exam at the end so that they can get into the associate's degree program in sports management, and therefore they will then have the prerequisites for obtaining a degree in sports management. So a lot of discussions at the ministry. We continue to work diligently to ensure that we provide as many opportunities to young people as possible, opportunities that were not afforded to them in times past. Questions?
Yes, sir. Segueing back to the motorsports and, of course, the bikers and whatnot, you mentioned they would have to put in programs in place to help develop these people and whatnot. Arguably, they might actually just need a location, a designated space. Now, we've heard conversations about wherever this may be, but I feel like we need to actively speak to a location, because if they do have that location, at some point they would just go on the off season, go there and release the tension. So, what's your yeah?
Very, very interesting question. Very interesting way of putting the question, but I get exactly what you're saying. The fact of the matter is, we currently, as we speak, we have in cabinet a proposal for the establishment of that drag racing track. It's all about location. We've made every effort to keep drag racing in the south of the island. I can tell you, as the Minister of Sport, that had it not been for that culture of drags being in the south, by now we probably would have identified an area up north. But because the effort is to keep it in the south of the island, and that is the tradition and the culture that has been built there, we've continued to have conversations on the location. A location has been identified. We still have a number of things in and around that location that has made it a bit difficult to finalize whether or not this is the location that we are going to use. But the intention is to have this location developed in a phased approach, the track laid out as safe as possible, sitting laid out as safe as possible, and of course an administrative area. So you can have the programs, you can have the actual drive-in school placed in the south that may be more of a economical drive-in school because it will originate from the Drugs Association, having those individuals that are coming up and the development program. So we want the development programs to be held at that area as well. So again, for me, sports has always been on and off the court. I think I benefited from having a lot of work done on my mind and a lot of different things off the court. And so that is what we are bringing into sports. So I envisage that we will have a state-of-the-art drag racing facility in St. Lucia this term. The phased approach is what we are going to use. And for this year, we are going to continue to use the same area and ensure that we make it as safe as possible for our people. So we will have an area for them to release when they have that need for speed, off-season and other times, but we need programs to ensure we have safe driving in this country.
What's the location?
Vieward.
All right, good afternoon, Minister.
Good afternoon.
Any comments on the misconduct of students in uniform in light
How
of
did I know this was coming?
yeah, in light of the recent security scuffle which happened in public?
Let me tell you, I've watched that video over and over again, and I can tell you my response to that question is more from being a father than necessarily being a minister. You would have to bring your experiences into your ministry.
Right.
But for me, first and foremost, I'll put myself in the shoes of the actual student and wonder, okay, first and foremost, why you feel the need to go and spray perfume on your body at a store, whether there's something wider going on with the individual. I believe actions are not just implemented or decisions taken to act a particular way, not just on the spur of a moment, but it's because of either socialization, either what you've been taught as an individual and what you know is acceptable behavior. And so for me, I've seen that video multiple times, and in uniform, I'm not sure that you should be roaming a store. I don't think that's the best use of your time as a young man. So if I ever get an opportunity to speak to that young man, and I certainly hope I will, I would ask, why do you believe that at the end of the time, this is the best use of your time? We've been speaking with the ministry and with the cadet corps and different institutions on extracurricular activities. We need to get these young men in either being a cadet or being part of a music group, being part of a boxing association, being part of certain organizations, so as to just take them off that pathway so you're not in a position where you're then in a situation with a security guard. And of course, I thought I pretty much had a panoramic sort of thought process on what could have happened. There was some whisper about that being what the individual was doing, and that would go back to meaningful activities, being engaged in meaningful activities in this country, clubs and organizations, which we continue to push. And you will be hearing the pronouncements by the Prime Minister when we get to the budget on increased funding towards getting young men in meaningful activities. For the security, I felt a little sorry for the security because first and foremost, most people making it seem like the security got beaten. The security, for all intents and purposes, seemed to be trying to just, hold on to this individual. I just think that that sometimes you want a mixed approach in terms of aggression and calming the situation and saying the right things to de-escalate. I don't think the situation was necessarily de-escalated in an effective manner. So it means that even in our jobs, we have to decide how we put programs together to allow people that we employ to learn certain skills. In terms of in schools, again, I always believe that the education sector is not just the teacher and not just the principal, not just the student. Society has to play its part, including the parenting at home, including like I said, the clubs, the organizations trying to hone in on individuals and make them more productive citizens of this country.
Okay, and my second question, have you heard of any works going on in the Grand Riviere River? Because a few residents have complained that there have been excavators, cutting on the edges of the road, and they're looking to have questions answered because it has caused some delay in navigation. So do you have any update on that?
Grand Riviere is a big place, so I would like to know exactly where they're speaking.
Closer to the Asu Canal end there.
Okay, we have, from my vantage point, we have commenced construction on a retaining wall structure in the area. And if you have any sort of excavation, is to protect. I've always said, I'm not an engineer, but the Ministry of Infrastructure definitely employed an individual that is building a retaining wall structure. So if there is cutting into the riverbed, I would suspect, I would like to believe that is from the engineering analysis that has said you need to cut this to install the wall here and install the wall there. We would never be able to complete the entire Grand Riviere River in terms of the retaining structure that is needed. This is a multi-million dollar investment that is needed for that area. And as you hear from the names, Grand Riviere, the big river, it's a big river. And then Asu Canal, a lot of people, you build very close to a canal and you actually call the place on the canal. And so we have to find the money. I keep putting pressure on the Ministry of Infrastructure to do more to protect more homes in that area. But the work has commenced. I will do my necessary questioning of the engineers. I tend to not try to question doctors and engineers as if I am the expert, but to get advice from them and bring it to their attention that the community is asking those questions, so as to ensure that whatever work is done is completed in a professional manner that everybody will be satisfied with at the end.
And my final question, we know that last week it ended the Teachers Counselors Week, or School Counselors Week, I should say. So we're just asking, are resources being made available to them, and knowing that violence continues to be an issue that is tackled and children are becoming more involved or more affected by what's going on in society. So how could that be cultured into school, and the resources for the counselors so that they could be able to debrief or recover after dealing with violent incidents?
Okay. I think debriefing and recovering, it's funny that I said this at a meeting that every single sector in St. Lucia seemed to want finances placed or proposed for them for debriefing. Every single sector but politicians. It seems as if every meeting I go to, there's this discussion on mental wellness, and these are very good discussions that we must have in this country. But I always encourage individuals to take personal responsibility for your mental health. Just as I tell people to take personal responsibility for their physical health, the investment of an hour, I always say at least an hour, in meditation, breathing exercises, in terms of probably going to the beach and just having a just internal time with yourself. I always believe that is an individual desire that you must have. In terms of financing, you will hear the pronouncements by the Prime Minister in this year's budget for some additional counsellors around the island, which would definitely lessen the weight on the current crop of counsellors that we have in St. Lucia. The current demand that an individual counsellor would have to a child, that would lessen that as well. The Prime Minister is putting in some significant finances into that because we realize that we really do need counselling at a higher level at our schools. The principals have asked for counselling as well. The teachers would need counselling as well, and we will try our best to provide as much as possible as time goes by. But the fact of the matter is, every single one of us here, especially if you're dealing with human beings, whether you're dealing with teachers, parents, whether you're dealing with colleagues, we all need to take responsibility for our mental health in this country.
I would probably argue that quite a few people will not be in sync with your maybe your approach or your thinking in respect of the incident with the security officer. What
By the way, I should have said that I haven't been briefed on the exact occurrence. I made sure that I said that this is my thinking when I saw the tape from the perspective of a parent asking those individual questions. Why is this child at a perfume store at this time when there are so many activities that this individual can be involved in? I just wanted to make sure I made that clear.
right? So, in actual fact, the question speaks to parenting, and so many think that there may very well be too little responsibility placed on parents.
Okay.
And so the gentleman would be a minor, and one should not be in that area. But then another issue arises. You again? Another issue arises that speaks to, again, the responsibility of parents in the whole scheme of things. Who holds those parents responsible? Because one, it is a minor, but two, the repercussions, the proposed repercussions. What should happen? Should the parent be hauled in? Should the minor be reprimanded from legally? What should happen? Because you're almost going to be in a situation where we're going to talk about the situation and it's going to reoccur.
I'm trying to figure out. I thought you were bringing a question
No.
at the end, so you just want to know my thoughts on
Yeah,
whether or not we have
the
enough.
responsibility of parents.
Okay.
You
All right.
did say you're speaking from the perspective of a parent.
Yeah. I just believe that we don't have legislation that holds parents accountable for the actions of children, and then you have to ask yourself whether or not we need legislation to hold parents accountable, or we need more programs based on parenting specific, as we've said in times past, to more fatherhood, because we seem to have less of an issue of parenting when it comes to motherhood, although all mothers would require some form of training if we're going to talk about parenting. Nobody's perfect, but I think right now we have a lot of programs that when you say parenting, the mother comes. We've seen an increase in men actually coming to these programs, I would admit. But fatherhood in St. Lucia, we need to continue to have more and more conversations about it and how it is that this can actually help with some of our social issues. Legislation perhaps about whether or not that the parent is held accountable. I would think more than likely this situation, the parent would have to step in and answer questions. I think what you're asking is, does that deal with the situation enough? Is that enough to say that would change the attitude or the outcome of what actually happened? That is left to be discussed. It's something I could raise in cabinet to say, okay, what are some of the approaches we can have that really holds a parent more responsible for the action of a child? And then you know for sure. I mean, I can well imagine that might be a parent that may be at work at that particular time and may have given every instruction for the child to be at home by 4 o'clock and 4:30, and the child may have not adhered to being home at that time. What actually is the punishment that you can give to the parent, therefore, when from your vantage point, if, let's just say as a single mother, that you have done everything in your power to provide that level of guidance to the individual, and they choose their own path. So it's a discussion. I love that question. It's a discussion that we can have. I can imagine the radio stations and the talk shows having those discussions as well. All of those things are always welcome, to get different ideas on what it is that we can do. But definitely parenting is something that we have to continue to have discussions on moving forward.
So let me just
I suspect you have you have in your head what should be done, from your perspective. I don't know if you want to share that with him. Yeah. He wants me to say it from his. Yeah.
So without telling Riani my age, in my first edition in the media back in the 90s, this very same thing was spoken about. Parenting and programs for parents, and we're still talking about it.
Yeah.
So the question now again is, are we going to explore these again?
So let me just shed some light on that. We, as a Ministry of Education, we've done something that is pretty much novel in the fact that across the OECS we've instituted the first ever survey of children that are actually attending schools, to find out from them, from their perspective, what they think about our education system, what works, what doesn't work, what satisfies, what doesn't satisfy. We will be moving on to getting the opinions of teachers, and to actually get from the teacher's perspective what they think about our education system in an objective manner, so we can then shape policy on what we are actually doing with the finances. I would hasten to say the other big stakeholder in that overall ecosystem of education would be parents. I think we need to be more in tune with what's happening at home as much as possible in an objective fashion. What percentage of our children are attending school with just a mom in the household? What percentage attending school with just a dad? What is the impact of that? What is the behavior and patterns like for these individuals? So at the end of the day, I think having that sort of census and information may guide some of what you've been speaking about in terms of tackling the issues of parenting in St. Lucia. I suspect the Prime Minister is outside. So if the Prime Minister is outside, there's no more questions, right?
Well, it was just a very short question. I know you spoke about caution with regards to the motocross. I just want to know how frank those conversations actually are with the associations and the police. Because I don't know if you remember that situation last year in Viewfort, where a stunt was being performed. The person should have not been behind that guardrail. That person should have not been performing that stunt in that direction. And then you had a situation where a minor got badly injured, as well as some other people. So just how frank are those conversations when you say caution?
Well, you see, we have a very, sad to say, a lot of the times we have a very reactive society. I try my best to ensure that we are as proactive as possible to provide those guards and guardrails, no pun intended, in this situation, for what is actually going on. So we do have those frank discussions. And just as we just spoke about parenting and whether or not the mother said to that young man, be home at 4 o'clock, and he did not come, sometimes you really put everything together to ensure that there is that level of safety, and individuals may decide to do their own thing that may cause what happened last time. But in terms of the fact that it happened last year, you can imagine the increased discussions that have been implemented to ensure that we have as much safety as possible at the facility. And it stands to reason that when we actually have a facility dedicated to that, we may not need some of the mitigative work that we're putting in right now.
One question regarding, we recently spoke to the Minister for Health regarding this, and he said that he was liaising with your ministry when it comes to the disruptions in water supply that Wasco is having, and the fact that schools have to be closed due to the health hazard it poses. Are we expecting that additional measures will be taken place to prevent those closures in light of the increasing drought and issues that Wasco is having?
So you think from a Minister of Education perspective, what can we do about that situation of Wasco and not having water available to our schools? That's a very good question. I think that is the issue of Wasco, and just like our education, is something that is cross-cutting and that requires every sector to function at an optimal level for us to execute properly. I do not like disruptions in our education flow. I do not like for us to not be in class because of the water situation. The Prime Minister has been providing Minister of Finance, more than $1 million in assistance to WASCO to deal with some of the water issues that we have. The price tag on dealing with everything that we need to do for WASCO. He also has that information as the Minister of Finance, and we will have these teething issues as we continue to see an aging infrastructure from WASCO that we are dealing with as a government. So for me, the Chief Education Officer has been on top of this situation at schools. She is the point person negotiating and having the communication with the Ministry of Health to see how it is that we can ensure that students are in school and they are living and functioning in a safe environment. But as to what we can do to mitigate against it, it has to be something that is done from a Minister of Finance, Minister of Infrastructure, Minister of all, tutbagay, to ensure that WASCO is functioning, because when WASCO is functioning, when we have free-flowing water to our taps that are safe, then we won't have those issues at our school.
Is increasing the amount of water storage and water tanks at schools an option?
Okay, I understand where you're going now. I understand where you're going now. Let me just say this. Since we're talking about schools and whatever we need at schools. We have schools on our island that we have schools on our island that are over 100 years old. St. Mary's College, St. Joseph's Convent. We have schools that were built 75 years ago, 50 years ago. And so the need for changing building codes, upgrades, is a multi-million-dollar task. I will be providing the actual facts and figures during our budget presentation. But we've been hearing calls to, just do away with schools because they've been there since then. It's almost as if this country has unlimited resources. The fact of the matter is we have limited resources. We have changing building codes that we try to ensure that we can upgrade our schools too. And one of the upgrades that we have been having active discussions about is more water storage, building systems, ensuring that we can harvest our own water at schools. Again, my dear, multi-million-dollar investments across all our schools. So conversations have started on getting funding agencies to help us in terms of storing water, harvesting water at our schools, at all our school plants. But we're talking about 134 odd schools on this island. And we will be starting, in a phased approach where it is most needed. The research would tell us which schools would suffer most from the WASCO situation so that we can then turn the page and ensure that there's more water storage at those schools. Yeah?
Thank you, Minister. So,
Thank you, Minister. Go on now.
Because we